Hi, everyone, and welcome. Really great to see you here. So, I'm Nicki Clark, Chief Executive of UMi, and we're here today because we promise all of our customers that we exist to help them go further. So, we do that by taking the hard work out of finding the best information, expertise, and finance to make it easier for you to get more of what you want, whether that's more time, more customers, or I guess in the context of today, more ways in which that you can figure out your way through the current cost of trading crisis and how to make your business more resilient. Now, we're a business just like you. So, as Chief Exec at UMi, I'm facing many, if not all, of the challenges that you're facing today. But we have the benefit of having worked with over 500,000 other businesses. So, we can draw upon what they've done, their expertise, and so on. But importantly, as well, we have a wonderful and incredibly talented network of partners. So throughout this series of webinars, you'll hear from some of them as well. So if today you find out that you need to dive in a little deeper into some of the areas where you feel you've got greatest risk, whether that's around retaining your talent, reducing your energy costs, finding more customers, then we've got a number of webinars coming up on that. So this series of webinars is part of our SatNav for Business service. And basically, what SatNav does is it doesn't matter whether or not you're starting out in business and you really don't know how to get to where you want to be, or whether or not you've been in business for quite some time, but actually you just need to find the quickest, most efficient, most profitable route. SatNav exists to make it easier for you to find those routes, to find those destinations and waypoints that are going to help you along your way. In terms of business resilience, the thing we're here to try and help you improve today, well, what is it? And for me, it's really simple. Business resilience is about how well you and your business can adapt to unexpected events. How do you limit the surprises? And importantly, how do you limit the impact or shock that those surprises result in? And fundamentally, lots of us, I think, in businesses, we're really busy, we're pushed for time, and it's really, really difficult sometimes to find the time to step out of your business, ask the really difficult questions, and look towards the horizon. But part of being resilient as a business is about planning for the unexpected, thinking about the scenarios that haven't hit you today, but may well hit you tomorrow. So, what we're going to do today is to test how well you can identify those things, whether or not you have the things within your business, the tools, the experience, the expertise in order to be able to weather those shocks, which will inevitably come in today's environment, to the best of your abilities. And importantly, if you don't, because today's about identifying where you could best spend some time in improving your resilience. If you find that you have got areas that you can improve on, we'll connect you with either the people or the solutions that can help you improve those as quickly and as easily as possible. In terms of the cost of trading crisis, as we're calling it here at UMi, we've launched a campaign. And the reason for doing that is because we wanted to play our part in galvanizing what is an incredibly brilliant world of business support, whether that's delivered by the public sector, the private sector, not-for-profits and charities. There's tons and tons of help out there. And I'm delighted to say lots of our partners have stepped forward and provided their time free of charge for much of the advice and guidance and solutions that they're presenting as part of this package of webinars. But let me just share with you, first of all, some of the things that we discovered from a survey that we did at the start of this campaign to try and identify and really closely understand where businesses are feeling the pain points and what we can do to help them. But what I thought I'd do before I dive into that was just take a quick poll. So you should see that a poll has popped up if I just start that off. And I was just really interested to know, what is the biggest cost pressure for you guys at the moment? So that's really interesting. We've got fuel coming through there, energy and utilities. So they're definitely hitting at the top at the moment. Well, it kind of comes as no surprise. We've got, actually, we've got a lot of people now commenting on actually the rising cost of staff, as well as insurance. That's a really interesting subject, and we'll probably come on to that a little more in a moment. Well, in terms of what we discovered through the actual survey, will come as no surprise, and there's some really common threads in here. So 32% of the businesses that we have spoken to have said that the biggest pain point is energy and utilities. Now, interestingly, today, 17% of you are saying that it's energy and utilities, and 50% of you are saying that it's actually staff. Now, you'll see from the survey on the information that's up there on the screen, 22% of businesses said it was staff. But what I'm certainly experiencing and hearing from businesses is the impact of the rising levels of cost associated with retaining people, finding people is definitely on the rise. That one isn't decreasing. And it may be that since we did the survey, it's changed a little because some of the support that's been put in around energy, but actually retaining your talent or even finding talent to fill those gaps is becoming much, much more challenging. Also, from a point of view of how much total costs have increased by. So really, really interesting statistics here. So 44% of businesses said that their overall costs have increased by between 11 and 24%, which is really, really scary stuff. And then we've got 25% of businesses saying anywhere between 26 and 50%. And I think this is where you do start to see some sector differences coming in. So, for example, if you're importing, I was talking to a gentleman this morning who said that at its height, a 40-foot container for him had changed from $2,000 to $17,000. I was also chatting to a business in the food and drink sector who said that their costs for their raw materials were pretty much close to 50% in terms of overall increase. So there are some really, really important areas where we can start to look at and increase and improve our resilience. Now then, one of the ways, obviously, that we can weather internal cost increases is to put up prices, and 41% of the people that we surveyed said that they'd had to do that. But what we want to try and do today is clearly that is one instrument and one way of improving resilience and improving cash reserves, but it's not the only way. And also it's often pretty hard, depending upon what sector you're in, to put up your prices. So 36% were saying that they've reduced their energy consumption, and 26% had said that they'd actually sourced new suppliers as a result. But sadly, overall, 55% of the people that we spoke to said they were less or much less confident than they were 12 months ago. So I hope by the end of today, what we're not going to be able to do is solve all your problems. But by the end of today, what you should be going away with is a personalised action plan where you've really taken 20-30 minutes today to hone in on those areas where you can still improve the resilience of your business and how well you're foreseeing what's coming down the track in the future. So using a pretty simple and straightforward technique, because that's what we're about at UMi, let's not make it complicated if it doesn't have to be. We're going to look at what things you can plan for, what you can do, and then also how you might review how well you're progressing with those things. So let's start taking a look at the business. In terms of your business risks, if we look here first, what I'd like you to do is take 2 minutes out of your business. Use this time now to take 2 minutes out of your business and think really, really honestly about what the risks are in your business. Now, some of you will be able to just go away and do that. Hopefully not go away too far. You'll stay connected on screen. But for example, if I just throw some thoughts in that might spur some ideas about where the risks might reside, What about the rising costs? Something you'll be acutely aware of at the moment, but what about the risks in your business beyond those costs that might seem obvious? What about distribution costs? Supply chain issues, for example, getting hold of the right materials at the right prices, but also within your supply chain, are there any vulnerabilities? So are there any of your really, really crucial suppliers who they themselves are having a tricky time at the moment in terms of trading conditions, and they're looking a little vulnerable? What would happen if that supplier couldn't actually supply you any longer? What risk does that present to your business, and how difficult would it make your business? Things such as thinking about your people. So where are the risks in the profile of talent within your business? Are there individuals who are absolutely crucial to your business's operations, and what can you be doing, or what level of risk is there against that person or persons leaving? Are you, in terms of vulnerabilities, structural vulnerabilities beyond people, do you have specific pieces of machinery, for example, that if that, for whatever reason, broke down tomorrow, that would be it, your business couldn't operate any longer? Or it might be particular pieces of software, for example, that if for whatever reason they went down, there was a bug in the system, what would that cause? And how do you address that now? As I say, to go back to the point about scanning the horizon and looking for shocks that might hit you, what can you do now to improve your resilience against some of those things? And also, really, really importantly, from a risk perspective, what kind of financial plans have you got? Do you know how much cash you're likely to have in 3 months' time? And how honest is that view? Have you really thought hard about, well, what if one of your key customers doesn't pay you on time and they pay even 10 days later than they're due to pay? What kind of pressure and risk does that put on your business? So hopefully you've taken a couple of minutes just to think through and literally list off what are the key risks within your business. The whole purpose of this is to start to narrow down and pinpoint where you can best spend some of your time addressing some of these challenges, because you can't do everything at once. I know what it's like running a business. You've got to pick your battles. So the whole point of this is really to rank them and understand where it's best to spend your time in terms of trying to improve your resilience. So, as I mentioned, let's talk about planning. And everybody usually sort of rolls their eyes at this point, but we can't avoid it. Part of being resilient is about how well you plan, and committing the time, whether that's 15 minutes a week, 10 minutes a week, or 2 hours a week, committing the time to spend a little bit of time scanning the horizon to think what might be coming over it, and making sure you've planned for that and done everything you possibly can. So, some of the things around financial planning, the all-important cash. So none of us, if we don't have the cash in our business to be able to pay suppliers, then really we've got a pretty serious problem. Most businesses actually fail because they run out of cash, not for any other reason. So you first need to work out if you've got enough cash to continue trading, and you need to understand how you've come to that decision. So some of the things that you will want to consider in your finances is, have you applied some realistic scenarios? So, for example, what if your orders didn't come to fruition as you were expecting them to? What if you saw a 20% less than expected level of revenue and orders in your business? What if your costs continued to increase by a further 20%? And what if both of those things happen? How expected are you to it? How exposed are you to rising interest rates? Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, yeah, I know all of that, but actually, have you done the work in numerical terms? Have you planned out and literally looked at what your cash is like in 2 weeks' time if 20% of your orders drop off? And does that leave you with a gap? So therefore, do you need to be considering where you can go to improve your working capital your access to working capital? Do you need to be looking at debt finance? And what about invoice discounting, etc.? Some of those things we can come on to. And if you decide today that finance is your biggest issue, or the ability to understand whether or not you do have the cash in your business to weather this particular challenge, then there will be a separate webinar on this in the days and weeks to come. So in terms of action and doing once you've done some financial planning, to help with that, in terms of financial planning, you might already have an accounting system that has an inbuilt cash flow mechanism. Just a reminder, the information in there is only as good as the information you put in. So the software is great, but it relies on the accuracy and thought behind the information that goes in. So if you're being overly optimistic in terms of thinking what your orders might be, then your cash flows will look healthier than actually they might be. So I'm a big believer in run sort of 2 or 3 scenarios through those models. But if you don't have one of those, one of the things that you can get here today is you can download our free cash flow forecast template. It's really simple and straightforward. It's just in Excel. If you need some help in navigating your way through that, if it's something that you've never done before, then you can pick up the phone to one of our advisors and they'll chat you through it. Or if you want even more detail on that, then we can certainly put you in touch with some real finance expertise. And as I say, the really, really important thing is identifying the list of things where you can reduce your operating costs from this, but also doing that scenario planning. Don't just do one of these, is my best advice. Make sure that you do 2 or 3. And as I say, there's a free financial health tech available from UMi if you would like to access it. Now then, if you don't have a profit and loss account, then you really need one of those too. But if you do have one, great. Again, it would be highly unlikely if it's not already embedded if you're using some accounting software, some of the big brands like Sage, Xero, etc. But if you don't have one, please do get in touch and we can help you with a profit and loss template as well. And basically, again, to highlight where you've got sensitivities or indeed where you've got some optimism in terms of things are looking like they're going to improve based on the forecasts. These are really important financial planning tools to help you understand your actual position and therefore be able to build some resilience into your business accordingly. In terms of, I talked a little bit about vulnerabilities, and I think this is one of the things that businesses often miss because we're all working lots and lots of hours and working really, really hard. It's hard to lift your head up and, as I say, scan the horizon and think about what vulnerabilities there might be in your business. I mentioned before, is there a critical, if you sit now and have a think, is there a critical piece of infrastructure in your business that's close to end of life? And knowing the challenges that some businesses are facing in terms of access to cash and investment, is that why you've held off actually investing in that piece of equipment? But then you've got into a scenario where potentially there is massive risk in your business because you're not going to be able to fulfill orders if that piece of infrastructure does ultimately reach the end of its life, but you can't afford to invest in replacing it. This is where if you spot that as a risk, there are things that you can do to raise investment, to access finance that may help you replace that piece of equipment or replace that infrastructure here and now. Are there, for example, key members of your team, as I mentioned before, that would be really, really hard to replace? Now, I think you'd be pretty unusual at the moment if you're not experiencing a difficult time in retaining talent. You'll have seen in the news and in the press the fact that in the labour market there are effectively more job vacancies now than people willing to work. So that's making the labour market really, really tricky for business owners and managers. And people are seeing salaries going up exponentially at the moment and staff being offered new jobs on higher salaries at the drop of a hat. Well, there are lots of things, actually, if you're not aware of them, that you can do to try and creatively tackle this. So some of the things, for example, are, have you thought about trying to reassure your staff, your key staff, by offering them longer notice periods within their contracts? What about putting a retention bonus in? So rather than having to see the immediate cost inflation of giving them extra salary, what if you got two bangs for your buck, you might say, by putting in place a retention bonus? So it might be slightly more that they were going to get in salary, but they might not get it for 6 or 12 months' time. And what it does is it gives them an incentive to stay in your business, but it helps you manage the cash impact much more effectively. And then one of the other things is, have you explored things like enhancing your terms and conditions in a way that doesn't cost you money through things like salary sacrifice schemes? There are many salary sacrifice schemes that are approved by HMRC already. They don't cost your business anything, but they do significantly enhance the terms and conditions that you can provide your employees. Again, if that's one of your areas where you think you really do have a risk at the moment and you haven't been able to turn your attentions to yet, there is a further webinar on that coming up in a few weeks' time. The overall schedule of the webinars will be on our website if you want to refer to that. And then with reference to suppliers, one of the things that's often not noticed is what's going on with your suppliers. So you yourself are working super hard to try and keep the books balanced and the plates spinning. And it may well be that there's one or two suppliers in your supply chain, and they might be critical ones, are really, really struggling. So when was the last time you actually understood of your critical suppliers? So let's say those top 3 or 5 suppliers, how they were faring and how they were trading. And you might not want to do something immediate if they tell you that things are quite difficult, or you have a look at their latest accounts on the company's house records. But you might need to start exploring an alternative supplier just in case that one isn't around any longer. That's exactly the kind of tactics that we'd be advocating in terms of building resilience into your business. So in terms of doing, here are some of the things that I've just spoken about in terms of vulnerabilities. So enhancing terms and conditions, raising the finance to invest in critical infrastructure. Don't hold off. It's really, it's kind of, I can understand why you think it's counterintuitive to think about investing in infrastructure at a time when you're trying to cut costs. But if you leave it too late, then, and that infrastructure is broken, then it doesn't matter how much cost saving you've got in your business. If you can't fulfill your orders, you really are in a tricky spot. And as I say, at UMi, through some of our partners, there are a raft of ways in which you can raise finance and the potential cash to invest in equipment. Working with creditors. So the other thing to consider with, it doesn't matter whether it's supply chains or whether you might lease property, etc. Start to have an open dialogue with suppliers and finance houses, for example, because there are lots of people renegotiating terms. Nobody wants you to go out of business. Your existing suppliers or landlord, etc., doesn't want you to go out of business. And please rest assured that this is a situation that is affecting everybody. It's something that is completely sector agnostic. It doesn't matter geographically where you are, and it doesn't matter the size of business. So these conversations have become quite common practice now. So what kind of different terms can you negotiate with some of your suppliers in terms of perhaps payment time to give you a little bit more time to manage your cash flow? What can you do around if you're renting premises or equipment, or you've got finance terms like HP, except HP finance? It's worth trying to have the conversation, because many, many people are managing to negotiate slightly better terms that are making it a little easier on their working capital. And then if you are really in a tricky spot, you can have a conversation and you pay VAT. Sorry, I should have said that. If you're paying VAT, you can have a conversation with the VAT man even. So there are specialists that we can introduce you to that can help you negotiate terms with landlords, finance houses, and indeed HMRC. So please don't sit there thinking that the terms that you currently have are the terms that you have to have. Somebody mentioned previously in the poll around insurance. Many people I know recently have been going back out to market and testing their insurance policies and the cost of. Now, that's quite a tricky process. It can be quite complicated and take quite a bit of time, but there are some great brokers out there as well. So that's definitely a thing to have a look at. In terms of action then on some of the vulnerabilities, we will have a webinar on efficiencies around energy consumption and utilities. You may already have exhausted all of those, in which case that's not a big risk for you and it's not a priority in terms of attending that particular webinar. But if you haven't, there's tons of things that we've managed to gather from other businesses that they're doing. There's really creative and really different. I was chatting to one business this morning, for example, who is in the food and drink sector. And they were telling me that the challenges around energy consumption has actually resulted in a really positive and long-term change to a product that they have. So as a consequence of understanding how they used less energy in their whole supply chain, is they've worked really collaboratively with the people that supply their glass bottles. And they've managed to take out 50%, believe it or not, 50% of the glass that goes into the bottle, and it still be a really cracking product. And as a consequence of that, the energy consumption that the glass manufacturer is using has gone down. So the price of the glass has actually gone down considerably, not just the removal of the 50% of the actual product. So there's some really creative ways you can do that. It might even be some stuff, I've spoken to some businesses where I've said, well, when you're doing a shift changeover, have you really understood, if you're in a manufacturing business, which systems or machinery you can turn off during that switch changeover? And it might sound really, really obvious, but some of them have gone, gosh, I never thought of that. Actually, we're going to go away and do that piece of work now. Productivity improvements, and this kind of feeds into energy as well. So there's a lot of discussion around adopting digital technologies in today's world, but this can play a really, really serious part in reducing your energy consumption as well. So just by considering what you can digitize in terms of processes or documents instead of printing them out can save you a considerable amount of energy, and indeed sometimes even costs, such as if you rent your photocopier or printer rather than own it yourself, it can actually reduce considerably as well those costs. So by looking at productivity improvements from using digital technologies, not only do you make your operations more efficient, you will also potentially reduce some pretty serious cost lines within your business. As I mentioned, keep a weather eye on your people. It really is an escalating problem for most businesses, and I think it's going to be the one that emerges as a top issue for businesses in the coming weeks and months. So really make sure that you're engaging with your team on a regular basis, that you're sharing information with them, and you're doing all of the things that you can creatively do to retain that talent in your business, because it will cost you more to replace it, for sure, 100%, than it will to retain it. So do attend. If you think you're not quite where you want to be with reference to being ahead of the curve on retaining your talent and your people, then do join the webinar on that. And I mentioned digital technologies before. Sometimes it's really difficult to figure out what technologies can help your business. Well, we've got a free digital audit that we can offer you and our advisors can do with you. And again, that's a sort of more detailed specialist version of the action plan that you've got today. So it will take you through a set of thinking and discussion around your business and digital technology, and it'll help you identify really, really clearly those practical things that you can do by bringing in digital technologies and what benefit they'll have to your business as a consequence. But we won't leave you there. We'll make sure that you've got the connections to go away and start to buy those digital technologies or bring them into your business. So in terms of reviewing, what can you do to make sure that you stay on track? Because one of the things that really wouldn't be constructive is to do this as a one-off exercise, because this challenge, many of us know, sadly, this isn't going away anytime soon. So once you've done this exercise, it's really important that you review it and you keep it up to date. So I know sometimes it's quite tedious, and depending on what kind of character you are and why you set up in business, you might find the financial side of your business a bit dull and a bit boring. But if you do anything, it's really, really important to keep that cash flow up to date. The cash flow, I think, is probably at this point in time, if you're not doing anything else, do a cash flow. The P&L can wait, but definitely do a cash flow, because most people, when they do one for the first time or they've refreshed it after leaving it sort of on the shelf for quite a number of months, sometimes sadly do get quite a surprise, and particularly when they start to plan through some of the scenarios that could hit that cash flow. So do really have a good think about that. In terms of have a look at your sales pipeline and ask yourself genuinely if it's stable, or whether you need, from a point of resilience, to get more opportunities into the top of that funnel. Often, some of the experts that we work with from a sales perspective can identify where you've got what I would describe a bit of a leaky bucket in terms of your sales process. Where are people falling out of your bucket that if you just did some really simple basic stuff, you could grab them and get them back in as an order? Where are those low-hanging opportunities, if you will, to improve and increase your sales or your order book? I've already mentioned, take your time with your team, absolutely crucial. And it's not a one-off exercise, as I say. From a review point of view, build in those mechanisms, those checkpoints where you can really get a sense of how your team are feeling. Because if you get a sense of how they're feeling, then you can action that and you're going to reduce the risk of them leaving. So one of the things that we do here at UMi is we call it UMi Pulse. And it's a bit like if you've gone through the airport and you see the smiley faces, what the team do here is just via a tool that you can get off the internet. It's really cheap, if not free, actually. You can tell your boss how you're feeling that day. What that allows us to do is get a really accurate, up-to-date sense check of how the team are feeling. They sometimes add some comments in there, and it allows us to address those really promptly. And that has made a difference to retaining the very best talent within UMi. So in terms of next steps then, as we are reaching a close, so some of the really practical things that you can do. So you can sign up free to the UMi SatNav. You get 3 months enhanced support if you're signing up as a consequence of these webinars. Please complete your action plan. You might be sitting thinking, well, I haven't got time to fill in an action plan or forms. I guarantee that even if you just literally take 5 minutes out of what I am sure is an incredibly busy day, you will identify, because it's written down on a piece of paper, it'll be so much easier to identify what it is that you need to focus your time on, because you can't do everything. Use the resource and expertise and tools that we've managed to galvanize through our network of partners over the course of our 5 other webinars. They're completely free. And the reason I'm advocating you do an action plan is because you can be even more efficient, and because you may not need to or want to attend all of those 5 based on what's coming out of your action plan. Speak to our advisors. You can speak to them free of charge. This is what we're doing as part of our cost of trading crisis campaign. So again, even if you don't speak to them, I am a strong advocate of sharing your concerns and ideas with whether or not it's another person in business that you know, or a trusted friend at the pub, or your financial, your accountant. Speak to an advisor and share what's causing you concern or pain within your business, and get some additional heads around that problem. You can access the full cost of trading crisis bundle here at UMi. Is another action you can take. And I do firmly believe that if you start this journey today, you identify the risks in your business and those real hotspots in your business where you could usefully spend a little bit more time to weather the shocks that are coming over the horizon, I can guarantee